Hello, everyone. I am so excited. As always, I have another really amazing interview for you today. I have Luke with me, and he is, for most intents and purposes, recovered. He figures about 95% of the way there, cautiously getting to that point of almost calling himself fully recovered. So I'm really excited to talk to him today and get to share a bit of his story with you. So, hey, Luke, thank you so much for doing this today.
Yeah, hi, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, why don't you tell everybody where you are in the world, a bit about yourself?
Yes, so I'm from Melbourne. I'm 34. I'm an electrician. I own a small electrical contracting business in Melbourne. And, I've struggled with ME/CFS for sort of probably the best part 18 months this time. I had glandular fever back in 2011 that I struggled with fatigue for probably about 12 months afterwards, and then got better. I was 100%, and then went through a divorce sort of 2 years ago now, a big stressful period. Had to move my house, my business, all my stuff in the factory, and didn't deal with it very well. I spent way too much time at the gym to burn off stress. I was eating badly, and got to a point where eventually I hit the deck and had to basically spend the next 18 months relearning everything that I sort of knew about health, energy, and everything I went through back in 2011 when I originally had glandular fever. It seemed to be foreign again. It was quite a hard thing to get back into a recovery mode and get back to the point that I'm at now.
So what did that look like for you when it sort of came back, when everything sort of crashed? Was it kind of an overnight thing? Was it slowly building, or how was that for you?
Yeah, so there was probably warning signs that I definitely ignored. I was spending way too much time at work. I was working too hard. The body was warning me. Now I look back on it in retrospect. Hindsight's 2020, and I was panning myself to death. I was exhausted. I wasn't sleeping enough. The diet was just rubbish. I was living on sugar and energy drinks, and it's absolutely no wonder that the body hit the deck, especially after moving, as my divorce and everything. It all just took a toll, and there was one Sunday morning I remember I woke up and I went, "Oh, I don't feel well." And I basically got up, had breakfast, went back to bed for 3 or 4 days. And that's when I sort of had the realization, like, oh, this sort of feels like the fatigue that I had back after I'd had glandular fever. When I had glandular fever, I was quite young. I was 23, 24. I recovered. I didn't do anything special to recover. I just looked after myself. I eliminated as much stress as I could and had a lot of time off work, and I just got better. And I wish I paid more attention to that back then, because it would have helped me now. I'm sure if I'd paid more attention to what I did then, I probably sound like I'm glorifying a recovery. I just got better over a period of time, and I just accepted it. I just read a few blogs. There wasn't a lot on the internet, channels like yours and things that are very positive. It was just, I was reading blogs that were like, I had glandular fever and I got better over sort of 6-12 months. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just get better. And then just got back into life. I started my own business as a result, because I'd had so much time off work that I ended up leaving my job over it, and started working for myself as much as I could, as my health had let me. And then over time, it all just, within, I'd say, 12, 18 months, I was back to full energy again, and was good. But this time, I knew when I'd hit the deck this time, which was the 1st of March 2019, I knew that I wasn't going to just rest my way out of this one. I knew I had to do more and be more proactive. I was 10 years older and had been through a lot more stress this time round. It was going to be a lot more important to start learning about health and understanding what to do to improve myself as fast as I could.
And what did that look like for you initially? Were you able to keep working, or how did this coming back impact your life?
So I committed a month off. Fortunately, I've got a great team at work that sort of were able to manage the business for me. I thought I'll have a month off and I'll see where I stand. And by the end of that month, I was on an upwards trajectory. I was finding that I was going up, and felt like I was on a code to a quick recovery. And then I had a stressful life event happen when I was about 3 months into my recovery, and I hit the deck hard again, like harder than I had that previous time, which was quite interesting. That I quickly thought, okay, well, this is obviously a stress response thing. Maybe it's your stress is shutting it down, is shutting your body down. So I went to see a naturopath who I thought, I've got to improve my diet. I've got to improve nutrition. I quickly went and saw a naturopath who was very good with adrenal fatigue and a lot of other conditions like that. That put me, I joked she was the Colonel of KFC because I felt like I was in the 11 secret herbs and spices. It was a bottle of this, a bottle of that, have a supplement here, a supplement there. But it helped and it didn't. There were some things that I think really helped. And there was other things that were worth a try that didn't. And that was quite expensive, but it was a good learning curve. So there was, and she spoke to me very early on about the stress response and making sure that I keep the stress low. And she was really brilliant also as probably a bit of a mindset coach to go, hey, you'll get better. Just bide your time, do these things, work on your diet. But I was on a lot of supplements that I was finding were really upsetting my digestive system. I wasn't absorbing them. So that's when I started listening to podcasts about gut health, and gave myself a 2-week crash course, I called it, in gut health and nutrition assimilation, the way the body breaks, vitamin C tablet down differently to how it would break vitamin C from an orange down, and how the real food breaks it down better. So my diet was okay, but it wasn't brilliant. I was eating a lot of meat still. I was back to work a little bit. So I was finding I'd sort of, from that first 3 months, like quickly had sort of deviated back to tradie food, we call it in Melbourne. The tradies, it's, I wasn't eating McDonald's or anything rubbish, but I wasn't eating a great diet. So I had to really, after I had that little second crash, I went, okay, I've got to get serious here on my nutrition. So that's when I really kicked into a good whole foods diet. I was eating meat still at the time, and I started a food journal and an energy journal from that, which was great for making patterns and detecting patterns of, okay, this food seems to help, digestion and energy. I slept better that night. And one thing I quickly noticed was that if I'd eat red meat for dinner or meat, I'd sleep badly, or not as well. That was something I was, like a lot of people with this condition, have struggled with is sleep. So I love meat, but I went, okay, I'm going to move to a plant-based diet. And that was one of the big things that definitely helped me recover. On a day-to-day basis, I found I was waking up the following mornings better off. I felt like the sleep was more refreshing, from probably using less energy to break the food, the meat and whatnot down overnight. But that was probably the big thing that my naturopath helped me with, was set a pattern of what supplements helped and didn't, and then what nutrition and what food that was worth avoiding and eating.
I'm always cautious to ask this question. I'm curious, but I never want to put out the impression that, what supplements work for one person will work for another person. But are there any that stood out for you? And of course, for people watching, understanding that this was specifically, for Luke and not for everybody, but any that stood out for you that were especially helpful for you?
Yeah, something that helped me initially was probably D-ribose. I was finding I was very heavy, and I found that was probably a powerful little thing at the start. But I experimented with appropriate doses and, let's have a few more scoops today, and was finding that I was actually getting like muscle twitchy, like shaky, and there was a clear pattern with that of D-ribose. I found was very powerful, so I had to use that cautiously. But it definitely wasn't the thing. There was no one thing that fixed me. The only things I've kept on now, sort of 18 months later, I sometimes use the D-ribose a little bit still. And the other thing that I've kept on top of is CoQ10. I found that sometimes helps me push through with a bit of brain fog almost. If I'm having a day where I'm a bit foggy, I find that helps. But a lot of the other stuff, there was adrenal herbs, and I don't even know what they were, to be honest. I sort of left it in the hands of the naturopath. My brain wasn't in a place of properly paying attention to all the dot points. She's a professional, I left it with her. So did they help? Probably. Can I quantify each individual thing? No, not really. I kept on with the naturopath stuff for 9 months, and then after that I sort of went, okay, I think I'm on the path enough here. I've understood what is and isn't working. I'll go my own journey now, because it was quite expensive. It was a couple of $1,000s a quarter, and I didn't want to continue spending a heap of money on something that definitely was helping, but then I thought I can manage myself.
What made you also, I'm curious about, go so quickly the route of the naturopathic doctor as opposed to going through more mainstream, traditional doctors?
I obviously, in the time of this, I'd seen my usual GP who I'd seen for years, and like a lot of people with ME/CFS, cop the, there's nothing wrong with you, your blood work's fine, you're just stressed, you've gone through a divorce, your work's grown, you just have a week off and you'll be fine. If you need some antidepressants, we'll put you on antidepressants. So I didn't spend a lot of time down that path. I went and saw a different GP after that, who was very helpful, who did some further tests, things like pituitary gland levels and things like that my first doctor didn't do. But because we didn't find anything that was, that's a red flag right there, from blood work and the Western medicine avenue, I didn't feel that investing time and energy there when you've already got very little energy was going to be beneficial. So I just avoided going down the rabbit hole. I used it as a good tool to, okay, I want a blood test now. Let's check my iron levels. Let's check certain levels. But I didn't feel that Western medicine had an answer. So I think you said in one of your channels I watched, I think you said something like, if you're riding a horse and the horse dies, get off it. But the Western medicine path was already dying when I jumped on it for me. I didn't feel there was, when I got all the blood test results back and they said everything's fine, it wasn't a path that I felt that I needed to explore.
I hear a lot from people as well that I talk to about, how important their mindset has been in the process. So I'm curious for you, what were you thinking through all of this? Were you feeling, always optimistic and hopeful and ready for full recovery, or where was your head at with all of this?
Yes, so generally speaking, I was never going to be beaten. I'm, especially in my sports and my business, my work, I'm a very resilient person. Like I'm never a no for an answer person. I had days, though, and little periods where I'm going, things working, am I stuck like this? What's going to happen? But that's when I found channels like yours and other medical journals and things very useful for that mindset coaching, there was so much negativity in the world out there. The first thing you do when you get any kind of illness is Google it, right? And the first thing that goes up on Google's landing page, chronic fatigue syndrome, the landing page says 95% of people don't recover. So I'm sure for most people that read it, that's just immediate stress. Oh no. Oh, what do I do? If I could, I will pay with my own money to change that landing page. Like that landing page needs to be changed. That's something that ruins mindsets from the get-go. So something that I as I say, we were chatting before we started this interview, was I made sure, even when I was getting towards the latter stages of my recovery, which I'll get to from a neurological point of view, I turned off everything social media, everything chronic fatigue syndrome related. I didn't want my brain to think about it, even acknowledge that it existed. So staying positive was, for me, almost as easy as turning off the negativity, staying off the social media, staying off Google, staying off any Facebook pages that weren't positive. And that was the biggest mindset thing that I think actually helped initially, was that only focus yourself on positivity. You can get better. You will get better. Just believe it. And if you haven't got better yet, you're possibly just the one next thing from trying away from getting better. You will do it. You just have to find what works for you. You have to find what works for you and use the information age that we are in, of so much information on the internet now, that if you look in the right places, you will find your answers for anything in life, not just health problems, but for anything in life. Health, headspace, money, business, family problems, mindset, you'll find the answer. You've just got to search for it, and search for the right stuff, because the internet is full of the wrong stuff too. As we've seen with COVID, there's so much misinformation out there, and it's easy to go into a world of misery. Stay positive, and you can do it.
I'm so glad you just said all of that. I love it. And I think it's so important. And so many people I talk to say similar things. You know, that mindset piece is really important, because if you let yourself get bogged down with all the negativity, it's a really tough place to be in to try and recover. And that 95% stat, I've talked about this before, but I think it bears repeating, but it's wrong. I say few things with this much certainty, because so many people are recovering and nobody's tracking them. Not a single person I've talked to who's recovered has been counted in any kind of stat.
I haven't.
The vast majority of us, if not all of us, are recovering outside of mainstream medicine. We're not a part of any official studies or doctor treatment protocols or anything. So for people watching, I truly believe with all of my being that stat is really, really inaccurate. So please don't internalize that. I don't think it's right.
I'm sure the Western medicine is the one that's tracking that stat, and the Western medicine is the place that, for the most part, this isn't for everyone, but for the most part, don't have an answer. They don't have an answer for this. So if the wrong people are tracking the wrong information.
Yeah, if we're looking just at Western medicine, I would be shocked that even 5% are recovering through that route, because it doesn't seem to be effective for many people. So it just kind of speaks to that statistic that it's not something to worry about.
And on the mindset, so there was some things I did that possibly weren't helpful in the start, but were long-term going to be beneficial. So because I own my business and I've got staff that work for me, I've got guys who've got kids, mortgages, and loans, and families that rely on me. I set a very clear boundary to myself, and this is a very personal, very strict boundary, that no matter how sick you got, you had to keep the business going for these people. So there was days when I would grind myself out of bed. I was get up, I'd have a shower, and I didn't have the energy to make breakfast, but I dragged myself onto the computer to answer the emails, to do the quotes, to call the clients back, and that was really hard. That was probably the hardest bit of my recovery, was keeping the business going. And I do not recommend people do this, but there was a time some days I was abusing coffee, anything that would give me energy, enough to spend an hour and a half on the computer to at least book a day's work in for the guys or 2 days work for the guys. That was probably the physically hardest bit for me day to day, because the body is just going to stop. You need to stop. I want sleep. But there's so many other things in life that I just couldn't put down. There's no annual leave for me. You own the business. That was a really hard thing. So what I did then was build a team of healers outside of work, so that I had my naturopath, I had my GP who was good for support, blood tests and all that. Didn't have the answers for a lot of stuff, but was very supportive. I started seeing a physio every week, especially because I was doing so little. I was finding I was getting really stiff and sore, so I started seeing a physio and getting a massage every week, just to help the body. And sometimes that'd pull you up worse. You'd have a massage and you'd come home smashed. You feel awful, but the following day you'd actually be, less cramped, less sore. I'm the sort of person prior to getting sick, like my step count on my pedometer would be 20,000 steps a day, 6-7 days a week. And so to be going to bed some days and looking at my phone and seeing I've got 300 steps on my phone was like, wow, that was actually something that was a bit of a reality check, wake up call going, you've got a bit of work to do here. But it's also been a really useful inadvertent tool to monitor my recovery. That is actually the thing that I've used. One of the little tools I've used I've gauged my recovery from, where I will get to the end of a work day and I got 12,000 steps today. Oh, geez, that's good day, and have the energy still at home at the end of the night and not be feeling fatigued. And I've been able to watch that little progress going up and up and up over the last 18 months of my recovery. That use the little things in your life that you already have to gauge your recovery. If you go for a walk, if you're at the point where you're starting to get out and do some exercise, you can use silly things like that to go, I went an extra 100 steps today. That's a big achievement. And for a lot of people, that mindset of, I'm 100 steps better off than I was yesterday, can be really powerful. And you've got to, like I said before, you've got to stress the positive headspace and the mindset. You can do it. Use all the tools in your toolbox of this world we live in, of phones, technology, and whatnot, to gauge recovery. Something that can be harmful, I say can, is the food and energy journal. So when I was starting to get a bit better and I was leaving the house and starting to go to a friend's place for dinner, and a friend would cook certain things that I've seen on my food journal didn't help. Oh, they're cooking this. Oh, okay, my food journal showed me that I've struggled with this. The food journal and energy journal became a negative tool because it started to build beliefs of, red meat, I really don't sleep well, my gut's no good if I eat that. Oh no, I don't want to be rude and say, can you cook me something else? So that was the point when I sort of went from using what I called an energy and food journal, cropped it onto a different page of an Excel spreadsheet, and started a success journal. I walked this far, and something that I'll get to in a minute, which was the lightning process, which was what actually really helped me. They talk about as a success journal for rewiring the brain. And that success journal became a very powerful tool. And I started at the start writing, a data note. I went for a short walk today. I took the dog to the park, or I did this, or did that. Through to this last week, I had a 19-hour day this week, just that we're filming this. I drove 600 kilometres across Victoria, drove my race car for 5 hours of the day, loaded it up and drove home. That is an enormous day. And being able to see your success go from I walked the dog for 10 minutes today. What an achievement. To, I had a 19-hour day and I sat down for 15 minutes. Geez, I'm a bit tired, but that's appropriate tiredness. And watching, now I scroll back, I've been doing this success journal for a year now, and scrolling back, and I put on big days or good days or days that did great, woke up, great recovery or anything like that. I was colouring, like highlighting the cells in green, or on really good days, purple, and watching it go from not many colours, a couple of green days here and there, to lots and lots of green and handfuls of purple. But it's back to the mindset. It's so important to visualize your recovery. And I found at the time I started doing this success journal, I'm like, oh, is this really going to help? But now I look back on it, I'm so thankful that I've done that and used that tool to rewire the brain to get to the point where I'm at now.
That's really interesting to hear you talk about that, because I didn't think that I did any kind of brain rewiring or any of that sort of stuff as part of my recovery. But so many things that people tell me who did these sorts of programs, I'm like, oh, I did something like that. And so much of what you were saying resonated with my own experience. Like, I didn't have the food and energy journal, but I had a daily sort of symptom journal where I was writing down, trying to track my symptoms, sort of trying to see changes and patterns. And it was horrible. It just, like, I couldn't see any patterns. It just bogged me down. Even just looking at it stressed me out. So I did switch over to basically a success journal. And I talked about this even in my book, and it was really helpful for me. And it just kept me going. And I could look back, not only to see the success, but to see, I'm excited about those 100 steps. 3 months ago, I was excited about 10 steps. It's just like, it's really building. So it's interesting to see that the things we attribute to our recovery aren't always what we think they are, or we don't even understand fully what's working for us. I put a lot of emphasis on exercise, but it might have been about, something else that was tied to that for me, that progress, that measurable, that mindset, because I enjoy exercise. Anyways, I'm going on in a bit of a rant here, but it's just really interesting to hear you say that.
No, but it's powerful information, and people need to hear it. I wish everyone who's struggling to recover could hear every bit of information there was. I wish there was a system that humans could download all the information, and as we've said, not all of it's going to work for you, but some of it might. Yeah. And that little 1%er might actually be the big game changer. So in my quest to get better, I started reading books of health, gut health, and one that I got onto, which I think you've covered in your channel, was a couple of books by Dr. Joe Dispenza, which one of them that was a really powerful one for me was You Are the Placebo. And he talks about, I'm going to explain this really badly. He talks about the way the neurology of your brain works, and synaptic gaps, and the what fires together wires together. And a good example of that being, a great tennis player is a great tennis player. They've hardwired their brain, their eyes, their ears, their balance, their swing coordination. All those nerves that they use constantly are fired and wired together in the same way that someone who can play piano's ears, mind, fingers, ability to play a piano all hardwires itself together. There's the expression in neurology called what fires together wires together. The more you do something, the better at it you get. And like anything with practice. But the science behind that is it's the brain, the neurology, the neural network of the body is wiring itself to be better at that task. And Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about what you do, you become. So if positive people are wired positive, a lot of negative people are wired negative. And he talks about the way that the cells change and neuropeptides, the information that the brain sends to the receptor sites in the body, the brain is changing those sites based on what you're repeatedly doing. I recommend everyone read that book. That was a really, really good book for a neurological point of view, which when I first got sick and the first thing you do is Google, and one of the things I stumbled across was the lightning process. initially when I got sick, I looked at them and went, I don't resonate with this. I'm not sure about this. But after I read Dr. Joe Dispenza's book, I read a couple of them. And that's when I went, maybe the lightning process mindset and way of training is actually something that is useful. Maybe they have got some way of retraining the brain to turn off this fatigue that might be helpful. So I spoke to one of the practitioners in Australia, who's a guy named Ian Cleary. He was excellent. And he asked me a very important question, one of the initial phone calls I had with him, which was, is your fatigue appropriate? And I sat back and I, well, no, I'm eating well, I'm resting, I'm trying to exercise. No, it's not. That's why I'm on the phone to you. And so that's when he explained, well, you've become a genius at fatigue. Your brain has hardwired itself. You have become so good at fatigue. You've focused on it for so long that you're a genius at it. You've hardwired it the same way that Roger Federer has hardwired his brain to be a genius at tennis. So that's when I thought, okay, we'll have a go at this. It wasn't that expensive. I think it was $1,500 or something Australian, and I just thought, I'm losing $1,500 a fortnight at work, not being at work. So what do we got to lose here? And that was the single biggest thing that made me go from struggle to flourishing. It was, I won't say overnight. A lot of people have marketed the lightning process as being fixed overnight. It certainly wasn't. It's been something I've had to use and had to employ the things you use in your training over the last 12 months since I did the course. And that's been a really useful tool to rewire the brain, turn fatigue off. Like many people with fatigue, I was struggling to sleep. I was exhausted, couldn't sleep, sweating, changing my sheets in the middle of the night because I'm just a ball of sweat, and I tried everything pharmaceutical under the sun to sleep. I was trying all sorts of things. My doctor was going, mate, we're running out of stuff to help you sleep. And within 2 days of doing the lightning process, I was sleeping again. And it sounds too good to be true, but it's not. I went from being a sweaty, horrible mess to the second day of using lightning process training to calm the brain down and turn that emergency response off. I slept the whole night. I slept from 9 at night till 7 in the morning. I didn't sweat. It was literally like I was fixed overnight. And it didn't obviously fix the fatigue initially, but because the body had healing to do. And now I look back at it in retrospect, hindsight's 2020, but it was blatantly obvious. I wasn't struggling to sleep because there's something wrong. I was struggling because I was in a stress response. The body is wired for stress and fatigue and emergency mode. So now I look back on it, it was blatantly obvious that there was nothing that doctors could give you that was going to rewire the brain's ability to turn the stress on or off. So obviously that third day I woke up, I didn't wake up, my fatigue's cured, but I woke up feeling 100% better than I had the previous day, purely because I'd had an amazing restful night's sleep. And now I notice, even 12 months after doing the lightning process, I notice if I have a couple of stressful work days where things are happening out of my control at work and I'm responding to problems and I've got the phones ringing off the hook and I get a bit stressed, I actually notice, I won't say fatigue, but the following period of time, a day or two after, the body definitely isn't doing as well as it was before I had that stressful couple of days, because it hasn't rested and recovered. And looking back on my life for 34 years, you can tell that it's I feel stupid to have learnt that this way, that it's like we're going through stress, the body's not repairing. So of course your body, you feel worse, your energy is worse, your cognitive focus is worse, even for someone that isn't trying to recover from ME/CFS. That's the case. So of course when you are trying to recover, I've lost my train of thought here. You need to turn that stress response off, and your body will rest and digest the food. And the time when I did the lightning process was about the time that I'd gone to a plant-based diet. So between the two of those things, a whole food plant-based diet, and then heavily using the training of the lightning process, that's when I found that I was going from not much is going on here to up I went. And within 4 months, I was back in the race car. I was back in the factory, building, fabricating stuff. And I would gauge that every Sunday, because I would go to the factory where my race car and my projects or my side projects and toys are, and I'd have a day in the factory, and I was gauging with my success journal every weekend. I was sort of kind of putting in a note about how big my day was, and then how well I'd recovered on the Sunday. Or so at the start, after doing the lightning process, I was getting back in the factory and struggling a little bit with fatigue the following days, where I'd be in a pit. I'd be going, I need to, not really getting out of bed today. But then within a couple of months was going from going to the factory and spending the day working on cars and bikes and whatever, to the Sunday being in bed, to within 3 months I was finding I was having the energy to go and take the dog for a 5K walk on the Sunday. And that was a really, that was my way of gauging how I'd recovered and how the recovery and using the lightning process training was working. I would love on your channel to explain what it is, because there is so much, I read the comments, I see it, there's so much misconception around the lightning process. And the comments that I seem to read are from things like my mate's uncle's brother's cousin's niece's boyfriend had a bad experience with it once, so therefore it's rubbish. But if you haven't done it or don't know someone that's personally done it, have an open mind, because it is a really powerful tool. And I can't see why it wouldn't work for just about anyone who's trying to recover from this. Keep your mind open and keep your options open. I've read so many blogs and people going, I don't want to try this because, and this being anything, I don't want to try a specific thing because I read on a blog it didn't work. So they've shut that down. Don't keep that open mindset of, just because it didn't work for this person doesn't mean it won't work for me. And that's been, I actually get frustrated when I see people who smashed things like the lightning processes but have never done it, don't know anyone who's done it. I'm going to defend it here because I think it's a really powerful tool that should be looked at if you're in a position where you're trying to recover from ME/CFS. Yeah,
and there's definitely a theme with the people I've been talking to, and I'm hearing more and more and more from people how, whether it be the lightning process or, some other brain training program that was a really pivotal part of their recovery. Maybe it wasn't 100% of it, but it was a big piece of it. So, and I know sometimes people don't react to it well, but I'm not going to, filter the recovery stories. If this is what people are recovering from, then that's what I want to put out there, because maybe the people who are being resistant, if they keep seeing it, their skepticism will ease up. And in people's defense, most people I find are very open-minded and not dismissive of it, and grateful for the information. And what I do still see, and I think this is where some of the resistance comes from, is that people feel like comments like, does this mean this was all in my head? Meaning it wasn't real. Like it was this imagined experience, this hell, this nightmare, very real physical symptoms that I was going through. it just never even was really there. So it feels like it diminishes our experience or minimizes it or invalidates it somehow when it's just like a brain wiring thing. But nobody's saying that it's not real. Our brain causes very physical symptoms for us, very real physical conditions. And just because the brain can be used to fix it, it doesn't mean it was never there. I mean, our brain is connected to our entire body. It controls so much. It makes sense that it would have the power to shut us down or bring us back to life.
Yeah, it's not in your mind. You're not depressed. It's not. Yeah. You're not imagining it. It's a very real thing. But you, from a neurological point of view, which is why I strongly recommend everyone go and read You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza. That book was I think the big turning point, because if I didn't read that book from a neurologist and understand what he's talking about with chronic health problems and whatnot, I don't think I probably would have been as open-minded to the lightning process as I was. The lightning process, I believe, is marketed really badly. It could be marketed so much better, and all of the questions people write on blogs and stuff could be answered with their website. They'd probably get a lot more people do the course. Something else I've seen people doing on some of your videos and other blogs and stuff is they seem to buy hope. I've watched people buying unbelievable things and products that may or may not help them. And something I was I found very important to me was to make sure that I didn't buy hope. So there was, for example, I was having some sinus trouble for a while in the early part of when I was sick. So I bought an air purifier. That was a logical choice. But I didn't want to go, someone said, go buy new pillows, go buy this and that. And I didn't think that would help. So make sure you don't put yourself under more financial stress than you already possibly are while being sick and out of work by buying every single thing that someone has read or written on the internet might help you. That was something I found was important as well, to keep a very clear head, which is really hard when you've got brain fog and all you want to do is get better. Mm-hmm. You just want to get better and you'll do anything to get better. And friends of mine who've never gone through this, you know, mate, what are you doing? You're eating plant-based. Why would you do that? But they haven't been as sick to understand that you will do literally anything you can to get better, but make sure that anything you can is helpful to your situation and is likely to get you a result. Try anything, but don't put yourself under duress to do or buy the item or the thing that it is.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's something I hear a lot and something I did as well. I was just throwing money at everything, any money that I had, money that I didn't have. Just that desperation really drives you. And that's what I started calling supplements. I was forever trying new supplements and they were just bottles of hope for me. It was kind of probably like why lottery tickets are so popular. You know, what is it? You're buying hope. It's just this. And that might be where some of the pushback or some of the hesitation comes around things like the lightning process, because people don't fully understand it. And although, yes, $1,500 is lower cost than some things, you know, for some people, that's a ton of money. So it's just, they're worried about investing in something else and then being let down. And
yeah, exactly. And go on.
I was just going to say, I'm so glad you brought up the book, You Are the Placebo, because I believe you might have been the first person ever to recommend that book to me. And then since then, endless people have been recommending his books to me. So I put it on my reading list and then it kept coming at me. So I read a couple of his, you know, the Break the Habit of Being Yourself. And then I read You Are the Placebo, and I love them both. And for people who aren't familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza, I believe I've mentioned this in another video, but his story is really interesting. You know, he was a young, fit guy, an athlete, and he was doing a triathlon. And, you know, while he's riding his bike, he got run over by a car and, you know, broke his back and his spine in 8 different places, and very dismal prognosis. But, you know, through the things that he learned to do, you know, through brain techniques and brain rewiring and harnessing that ability of the brain to heal the body, he was able to get himself fully healed. So it's just as if you heal your chronic fatigue syndrome or ME with a brain training program, it doesn't make it any less real than his, back being broken in 8 places. Just because he used his mind, it doesn't mean he imagined that injury. It just means that our minds are powerful. And if we can harness what they can do, that can be a really amazing thing, I think. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
And I just hope that if this global pandemic we're in COVID, that there's a lot of people with long COVID that, from what we can tell, is just ME/CFS. It's just a trigger. From what we can tell, it's like glandular fever, Epstein-Barr virus can trigger a stress response. I hope the Western medicine community opens their mind to A, this illness, and B, techniques to recover from it. Again, I've read blogs, so many blogs of people. Oh, I'm a doctor. I've got a chronic fatigue specialist who's got me on these tablets, and they're not working. But I'm trying them, and it's the Western medicine. Maybe the good thing that will come out of this pandemic is that this condition will be recognised a little more. And I don't expect Western medicine to create a tablet that will just fix ME/CFS. But even if they can recommend things like brain training, turning off the stress response. Another tool that I've used is even meditating now. If I find I'm a bit wound up, or before bed, if I've been in the office till late and I'm going to bed a bit wired, I just spend half an hour just meditating and winding down. That's just slow the nervous system down, and I find that helps. And it feels silly having to go on a channel and say, I learned all this stuff while I was sick. Truly, I believe in this information age that we're in. We should be teaching things like stress response, food assimilation, nutrition. All this stuff should be being taught at school level worldwide. There'll be generations of people who are just healthier from it. I wish that I was taught more about food, nutrition, sugars, all of that stuff at school. I wish that, because if I knew more about my health, I would have appreciated it more. That's something that I'm sure everyone who recovers from this has learned, is that you have to appreciate your health. You have to appreciate your energy and what you have when you get better. I feel like it opens the door of life again. You take so much less for granted now, that I just wish we were taught this at schools.
Yeah, it's a theme, I would say, with virtually every person I've talked to, that we are thrown into this crash course of learning about our bodies, about our health, about our mental health. And we just, looking back, it's amazing how ill-equipped we were to deal with these things. But, and unfortunately, most of us aren't getting this from our mainstream doctors. If you're not through any fault of their own, they're just dealing with what they were taught as well. So yeah, that's one silver lining, I think, from going through this, is that most of us come out the other side of it kind of experts on how to take care of ourselves.
Yeah. I feel like everyone who's recovered from ME/CFS knows more about it than their doctor does. That's just a frustrating situation. One other book I read that was really useful, which was one I got off your channel, was the Sleep Smarter book. That was a really good tool. I recommend everyone read that as well. There's so much information about that, about sleep. So for anyone who's sleeping badly, that's definitely a useful tool. I read that well before I did the lightning process, and that helped my sleep a lot, just by some of the things that I learned in that book. Then, as I said, using the lightning process training to calm the stress response down before going to sleep, or if I woke up in the middle of the night. That all of the information and training put to use helped. Something else I was actually doing daily was grounding, walking out in my grass on my bare feet. I feel like a hippie. I feel like I just walk out in the backyard with my bare feet. I and then through winter, this winter's just gone. I bought an earthing mat, so my office desk here has got my keyboard sits on an earthing mat. So at least through winter, I could still try and do as much grounding as I could when I wasn't going out in the cold Melbourne rain. So that was something else that I found definitely helped, especially doing it at night. I found, placebo or not, it helps me sleep better at night. That was a useful tool, and that was something I learned from the Sleep Smarter book that I had no idea. Something again, I've no idea that.
Yeah,
existed.
It's a great book. I believe it was Liz Carlson I interviewed, and she recommended it. So I read it, and I devoured that book. I thought I knew everything there was to know about sleep, but I did not. And it helped me tons. And I started doing the grounding as well. And I'm literally out there hugging trees, and I look insane and I sound insane, but it seems to help me. And I did a video all about summarizing that book. So I'll link it above if anyone wants to check it out. But yeah, it's a great one. I found it really helpful.
Yeah, definitely worth the read.
We talked a bit just before this chat, because you were saying, I said, how do I introduce you? Fully recovered? And you said, well, until Tuesday, I would have said fully recovered, which I appreciate your honesty. I think it's hard. We want to cling on to that feeling, that title of like, yes, I'm fully there. But so what is that? I'd love for you to share a little bit here about what that process has been like for you of, am I fully recovered? Am I not? How are you gauging that?
And that's a really hard one, because how do you decide you're fully recovered? How can you go, yes, I've done it? So like there was weeks where I thought, let's go back 3 months, 5 months. I thought, I'm pretty good. I think I'm there. And then I try to get into some fitness, some cardio. I love cardio. Before I got sick, I was running 60, 70 kilometers a week. I was loving it. And that's probably the fitness activity that I've struggled with. I don't know if it's a mental thing or not, but I find if I go for a run, I don't pull up very well from it. Maybe it's just a general recovery thing because I've lost so much of my fitness. But then this week just gone, as I said, I had a 19-hour day. I stopped for 15 minutes in the middle of the day, and that was a Tuesday. And the Wednesday, I was pretty buggered. But I was trying to decide: am I fatigued? Am I just very tired? And then on the Thursday, I woke up. I'm recovering well. But then the question, as I said, the lightning process training asks you is this fatigue appropriate? Is this stress response appropriate? If you're laying in bed sweating, you're stressed out to the point you can't sleep, or you're tossing and turning, and then the stress is inappropriate. But if you were getting chased by a lion, the stress is appropriate. So that's when I use that to ask myself the question and say, okay, well, I've just had the biggest day I've had in 18 months of my recovery, and I've pulled up pretty tired the day after. Is that appropriate? Well, I'm going to answer my own question with a yes, because that's a big day for a healthy person. Especially when there's 600 kilometres of driving in it, towing a huge trailer, and there's a lot going on. So I answer that question as yes, that tiredness was appropriate. If I had walked my dog and then had to spend 6 hours on the couch, well, that's probably inappropriate. So that's how I've gauged my recovery. The only reason I'm saying I'm probably shortchanging myself to say that I feel I'm at a 90% recovery point, 95% recovery point, is because I haven't been able to go back to cardio. That's the thing I want. That's the thing I want. If I can go for an 8K run and pull up and go, we're done here, that's the day that I'll put the big red recovered stamp on myself. Maybe I'm being hard on myself, but day to day, I'm back to work. I'm back to my hobbies. I'm sleeping well. Where I'm eating well. My general health's good. My happiness is good. That's that's a recovery. That's a win. I truly believe from where I was at March last year when I was struggling to have a shower and make breakfast, that's recovery for me.
And running is hard. You know, healthy people will tell you if you start running when you're not in great cardiovascular shape, it is a really tough thing to get started. And for me, it was the last thing to come back as well. And it held back I thought I was recovered, and then I started running and it felt like it was harder than it should have been. So I thought, okay, maybe I'm not fully there yet. But you know, we were talking about how we lose this perspective a little bit of that appropriate tired and appropriate not. And I think there's this idea, maybe for some of us, I know I feel this sometimes, like being recovered means that I never feel tired and I never feel unwell again, which is ridiculous. So it's interesting how you lose your perspective a bit of normal and appropriate when it comes to our health.
Yeah, and I've had to make sure I keep a clear picture of that, because otherwise, naturally, I'm a perfectionist. My hobby, I'm a perfectionist. My work, I'm a perfectionist. I want to maximize every opportunity at work. My hobbies, my sports, I want to be the champion, and I want to have everything perfect. And all perfect is chronic disappointment syndrome, because it's very hard to be perfect. It's very hard to be perfect. So if you want to be a perfectionist, you're often going to be disappointed. So I've had to reevaluate what is perfect, what's acceptable to be not perfect, and what you want. And if it means I can only run moving forward now 5Ks, not 6, well, I'm older. Mm-hmm. I'm not 20 anymore. That's part of life, and you've got to just make sure that you don't be too hard on yourself. And that was something that I probably was for a lot of years, that now in retrospect I go, that stress probably hurt your health over a long period of time of trying to always be perfect. Perfect is a really hard thing to achieve.
Yeah, that's so important and really well said. Really well said. You know, as we I could keep people here talking forever. I have to put the brakes on and be like, okay, we can't stay here all day. But I appreciate how much you've shared. And as we kind of wrap things up, I always want to know, you know, what is your advice for yourself if you could go back, or what would you want to say to people who are watching, who are facing similar things like this?
It is normal to feel like you'll have the biggest thing I struggled with were the mental days going, oh, I'm never going to get better. How am I going to do this? Am I stuck like this? You will do it. You will do it. Just keep trying. Every successful person is a person who's a failure that just tried one more time. You're the next thing to try away from getting it. And that's why channels like yours are so important and so valuable for the community, because what works for me won't work for everyone. That's the joy of being human. And I've got to thank you, because so much of your channel helped me get to where I was. I was, even when I'd read Dr. Joe's book and I went, I think I should do the lightning process. I was a bit still a bit, okay, maybe. So I watched a couple of interviews on your channel with people who'd done it, and I had these great results, and I thought that was it. So even your channel has helped me, and I personally thank you for that. And there are so many people in the world that will be benefiting from your relentless effort that you're putting into this. So there's a lot of people that owe their recovery, or big portions of their recovery, to people like yourself who are sharing the right information and sharing constant positivity, and not reading things on Facebook like, oh, I've tried this, I'm never getting better, I've been like this for 10 years and I can't do it. Well, that's not with that attitude. You're sick, you've got limited energy, you're trying to recover from something that you've got low energy. Don't go on the internet and complain about it. Use that little energy you have got to go on the internet and find that next thing that's going to get you from a little energy to a bit more, to a bit more, to a bit more. As I've said, the lightning process was the big step, but eating plant-based, sleeping better, there's no one thing that I think was just going to wake you up one day and you're fixed. You've got to use what little energy you have in whatever state you're in to find that next thing. Don't give up. Don't be beaten. it's really easy to be beaten. That's the mindset is of I can do this and I'm going to be a champion of my own health. That's what I would tell myself again if I went back to where I was when I first got sick. That's the biggest thing that's so important.
I have so much gratitude to you, Luke, and people like yourself who do this, because as I always say, none of this would be possible if people like yourself didn't come forward and bravely share your story. It's very easy to recover and find what works for you and then just go on and live your life and, not share any of it. And that is, people's choice, people's right. But I know it can be a scary thing and it's a vulnerable thing to put yourself out there in the internet, and you never know how people are going to react. So thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome. And I thank you for the work you put in. And I know there's people aren't going to agree with me, but there's people that aren't going to agree with you. And I'm happy to be debated. I'm happy to be challenged. If people have got questions, put them in the comments. I'll try and reply to whatever I can. But keep an open mind to anything to do with your health that may get you to a recovery. That's just keep that open mind.
And if people watching, if you're somewhat new to brain training programs and this whole concept or this whole recovery approach, I do have a playlist. I'll link it above that has some different videos talking about some different approaches and some interviews with other people like Luke who have used the lightning process and other programs to recover. So yeah, there's some really great stuff. And I think being open-minded is key. This might not be for you, but it might be. You're not going to know until you at least, give it a look. All right, Luke, Again, thank you so much. If people want to reach you, is there a way to do that? Should they leave comments under the video, or what's the best way to get in touch?
Look, I haven't blogged or journaled any of my own health. I have got an Instagram page for my motorsport and racing stuff. They could message me. I'll give you the link. They can send me messages. I try to reply. I'm not that active on social media, but I'll make sure I reply to the comments that I see on the bottom of this video. But yeah, I'll send you the link to my Instagram, and if anyone wants to message me, feel free.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. So yeah, thanks always to the people who are watching. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your questions in the comments. And if you're new here, I invite you to consider subscribing. I've got a lot of great stuff coming up over the next couple months. I've got interviews with some MECFS researchers and scientists and some more full recovery stories and a lot of really great stuff. There's a lot more that we're starting to understand with this illness, which is really exciting. And I'm looking forward to getting that out there. So yeah, thanks again to you, Luke. Thank you to everyone who is watching.
Thank you. And thanks for having me. What a pleasure.
Yeah, that's it for today. I will see everyone in the next video.